Dungeons and Dragons Adventurer, Issue 20. Surprise! Your enemies. Let's get into it and see what this is about. So first up, of course, the dice as usual. And instead of a set of a dice, we've just got one dice this time. And it's a nice D10 by the looks of it, complete with its bag. And so obviously this dice here is just going to go with the giant dice we got from the previous issue. And obviously it's blue because that's the colour of the adventurer as I've seen coming up. So this is the second one I've looked at now anyway. Complete with bag to hold it. So let's put that away and check out the magazine. So welcome to issue 20. It's going to be horror themed. So the encounter is horror themed, and to prepare it we're going to have some things such as running in horror encounters in the DM section. Also criminal and spies who like to be horror, I guess. And surprise! The dice surprised you, as it says there. Surprise everyone with the dice. So let's start with the sage advice. We're going to look at ways of killing off the players without combat, falling and suffocating. So for falling, anyone can fall up to 10 feet, no problems. However, if they start to fall more than 10 feet, they're going to take damage when they land, and they'll take 1d6 for every 10 feet fell. Up to a maximum of 20d6 though. So if you fall out of a hot air balloon and you go 1,000 feet, you're still only going to take 20d6 damage. But you wouldn't want that anyway. And it's got here the details for the feather fall spell, just in case you have any falling. Then the next danger the party faces for suffocating as well. So if you're trapped in quicksand, stuck in a bog, swimming, trying to hold your breath, you can hold your breath for a number of minutes up to 1 plus the constitution modifier. Or if you run out of breath or you're choking, it's equal to your constitution modifier. But when this time runs out, your character drops to 0 hit points and they start dying. However, if you can't breathe, you automatically fail all your death throws. Or death saves rather. So if someone's stuck underwater, once they run out of air, they're going to have 2 turns to get, or 2 rounds to get to the surface, or they're screwed. Although it does introduce the potion of water breathing, so you get an hour underwater with that one. However, as this is now giving us more ways to kill off the party, they're now going to talk about character death. And does say the threat of death makes the game thrilling, but you need to balance the game so the characters aren't at constant risk of being slaughtered, which is completely opposite of how I tried to play it. I want them to fear for their life. So it says like to be a bit of a game designer. So think about video games where fights are too easy or too hard, and you want to try and match it like that. Over the page, we see it gives us a lot of nice points about character deaths. So when characters should die, make it fair, obviously. A little bit talking about when they die, bring them back alive as well. So obviously they get their death save throws where 10 or higher success, and 3 successes mean they come back to life. 3 failures mean they're dead, but on a natural 20, they also regain 1 hit point, so they're instantly back. If the character dies off, you could make it dramatic, like they might sacrifice themselves to make a cool story. It says make it fair, so they could have chosen not to run away from insurmountable odds. So it would teach them a bit of a lesson for unwinnable fights. But you can also go back and use resurrection spell, although it might have quite a bit of a cost to pay. There are bits like a funeral service and fitting tribute. And again, the slain character might even some days rise as an undead themselves, possibly to face the party. And I guess the likelihood of that happening is quite high if you happen to be inside a horror encounter. So it's quite nice they've got all this details for the DM section for how to do horror encounters. If you've never done one before, or it's got a lot of tips, say maybe if you have but you've not done it very well. Because these are one of the encounters we might not even need combat, it's just all about horror. But what sort of horror? I guess that's the thing, because it's got a little thing here about consent. So some players might have problems with cannibalism, spiders, cruelty to animals, anything that's in a horror setting really. So a little tip here is to have some like hard and soft limits. So a hard limit's not going to happen at all, and then a soft limit would happen off screen, or so something out of the player's view. But as it does say here, most of the stuff's going to be to do with undead. So I normally see the horror as kind of like a creepy shock horror, like jump scares, rather than a psychological eating other people horrors. But they all exist, don't they? I mean, this guy's definitely just heard something horrifying. Although actually so have all of them. Or maybe not her, she seems happy, but the rest of something scared them. And again with the wooden DM screen. All the rest of it comes with it, like the dice gel, the dice and that. I wonder if that was like one of the original gifts for like the trials before they decided on the one you get now. Or maybe it didn't have the one you get now, so that's just the stand-in sort of thing. So one of the most important bits about the horror is creating the atmosphere. You know, dimming the lights, putting on a bit of background music, just getting fully focused in it. And it's got a nice details to narrative techniques here, so you can engage all the senses, like describe to the party what they can hear, see, smell, maybe even taste, which may not be a good thing. But you can also use a bit of humour to alleviate the suspense, and then just whack it back on again and just build up to the final dramatic experience. such as whatever attacks them, don't tell them what monster it is, just tell them the effects of it actually like going after them. Perhaps it actually like slaughters an NPC in front of them before turning its eyes on them. And the whole goal is at the conclusion the players will have like left the same experience that they've had in like a thrill ride, but not be too scared to sleep. And if they picked up any injuries on the way, they can use potions to recover. Although potions is kind of like a blanket all term, so it does potions, elixirs, kind of anything you drink like herbal remedies. And there's simple stuff like potions of healing. There's some potions that will give you magical effects like invisibility, for example, or strength. There might be some potions that are lost to time as well, and the only way to find them is in ancient treasure hoards. Luckily, they don't have an expiration date, unlike a couple of comics I've seen. And you can make your own potions if you've got proficiency in alchemist supplies or the herbalist kit, which I think we've got at least one of those, or a spellcaster, so I'm assuming that's something I'll pick up at higher levels. But be careful of mixing them, whether mixing them in a flask or mix them in your stomach, because if you drink more than one potion, they could have some detrimental effects. On the drinks menu today then, we have the healing potion like normal, also the ultra rare potion of supreme healing, which is almost 10 times as powerful, 5 times as powerful. Water breathing, as mentioned earlier. Invisibility, which obviously makes you invisible. New to me though is actually that the liquid's invisible too, so you've got to check it's not an empty vial when you find it. Vitality, which might have been previously covered, but you removes exhaustion, cures disease and poison. Storm Giant Strength, which puts you up to 29 strength, so that's plus 9 to strength checks, as well as obviously any damaging rolls or attacks with hand-to-hand weapons. And Dragon's Majesty, which can actually change you to a dragon for an hour. Pretty cool, yeah? So anyway, yeah, now we're going to go to surprises. And we've got the basics of surprise, which has definitely been covered previously. So if you want a surprise, it goes your dexterity stealth check up against a passive wisdom check, perception for an opponent. I'll learn how to say these the best way someday. But yeah, so if you manage to surprise a creature, during their first action in combat, they can't take an action, can't move, or do a reaction. So if they go first, they do nothing their entire turn. And if you go first, you'll get to basically attack them twice before they do anything. A nice little thing it kind of says down here is that some people choose to think of surprise as a condition, which kind of makes it a bit easier to comprehend. A very specific and limited time condition, but a condition nonetheless. Something to note, in the first line of the rules as written, the DM determines who might be surprised. So even with the roll off, the DM might for some reason just go, well, these guys are surprised anyway. Or might decide it's one person or a group, or in between. So one amount surprised, one amount isn't. There could even be some sort of surprise that happens without hiding and trying to sneak up. In which case, even though one side's still surprised, there's no advantage on attack rolls because they won't hide to begin with. And ways to gain surprise, you could move stealthily, set ambushes, be unpredictable, like charm them up and then attack them, or just impair their senses. This also kind of relates to the final bit of the sage advice for the battlefield control. So just controlling your environment, using it to your advantage however you can. So in combat, you might use some choke points just to make sure the enemy can't or get to you if they outnumber you. Using the features, so strong characters might push or pull or shove enemies like off cliffs or into spaces. You can knock target prones, which can obviously give your rest of your party advantage on attacks against them. And just other tactician stuff that could come up. Mentions a bit of monk and their stunning strike. A couple of spells, and there's going to be more over the page. And also use the environment to your best advantage. So if you're in a forest, you've got trees for cover. If you're in a warehouse, you might have some flammable barrels you can throw around. Using battle magic, you're going to get 3 different types of ways to control the environment. So you can do it directly, and this can remove or manipulate your enemies. So hold person, banish, confusion, stuff like that. You've also got terrain control. So these are going to affect the actual terrain itself. Possibly creating spikes, grease so it's slippery, darkness so the enemies can't see, which also lines up with the impair their senses. And the trickery, so some probably bards would do it mostly, minor illusions to create some boxes to hide behind, or even a phantasmal killer that can frighten a creature away by manifesting its greatest fear. Now we're done with the sage advice, we're moving on to the backgrounds, which covers the criminal or the spy background, which are quite similar. So I think normally you've got the criminal background, and the spy background it's got there is a variant that shares the traits. Naturally, this background is going to serve rogues, but it could be tailored to any other background to suit the class. So I'm not sure, like a fighter who's got criminal skills and maybe was against the law and now fights for the law, or a monk who spies rival monasteries, possibly even clerics and paladins it said, which seems odd. But I guess that makes more sense. They're spies rooting out corruption rather than criminals. Once you've decided you want to be a criminal spy, how are you going to roleplay it? It gives you all the background up here. So they might have a lot of deception, but they're not generally liars. In fact, lying isn't a big part of it. It's more knowing who to lie on and when. They might be working some sort of long con. Or an interesting one to do, if you can work it with the DM and the player, an unwitting sleeper agent, magically unaware so they can't be found out even under a zone of truth spell. There's a lot of spells mentioned in this issue, I'm finding, and I feel like I don't have quite the spell bits to cover it just yet. But anyway, the benefits you'll get as a criminal spy. So you're proficient in deception and stealth. You'll also have a tool proficiency of a gaming set, which will help with, obviously, if you're going to be sneaky, maybe you'll be cheating. But also you can just use it to seat at the table beside merchants or soldiers, or potentially any useful contracts, or deceptively any marks. But the contracts one as well, yeah, I forgot to mention, the background provides you with a long-standing contact, not contract. So you've got someone to reach out for information or aid. If you're a criminal, it could be from your prison background. If you're a spy, it could be someone you've met in the network. Only time will tell. Anyway, so now our lore section, and we've got the Church of Kelemvor, which isn't one I've heard mentioned before in the issues, so that's something new. And it's to do with the Lord of the Dead and all his followers in Faerun, which fits in with the undead theme we've got going, and I imagine we might find a few of these in the encounter. Although they're actually here to eliminate the undead, I assume they were working with the undead, but they're working for the Lord of the Dead against the undead. And I should have read down, as any member of the church will tell you, it's a mistake to assume that Faerun's Lord of the Dead is a malevolent force who must be feared. He's a just and fair entity. And obviously the skeleton arm of the scales is his symbol. The whole purpose of the church as well is to provide a peaceful transition for people from life to death. This will kind of deal with character death as well, which links back to the other issue. So everything here is kind of linked with the horror, the death, the undead. So these guys will help you do like funeral rites and sort out what's going on with possessions after you've gone and stuff. The faithful of Kelemvor. The priests don't teach people that they should follow him, more just that they should embrace death but also seek to follow their own god. And they're also not like a suicide cult or anything. Like they don't embrace death, but they don't encourage it. In fact, far from it, they'll try to treat disease and to prevent it as long as they can. And they're also quite fanatic about hating the undead, like Kelemvor. But even they want to eliminate necromancy, and they're against all undead. But there's some good undead, such as the elven protectors known as the Belnorn. Even though they're good, they're still undead. They still want to eliminate them. There was also two more death gods, Merkel and Jurgle, from times past, who now work with Kelemvor. And there's the realm of death here, which is where souls will gather while waiting to go to the afterlife. And possibly they might not be collected, and they might be turned into lava, or worse. I guess that depends how much you offend the god. And with that, we're now going to go to the encounter, Drafting the Dead. So as normal, if you're not a DM, just use the chapters to skip ahead because it's for the Dungeon Master's eyes only. Otherwise, let's get into today's encounter. It's to do with the Cult of Orcus, who's the demon prince of undeath. And they're going up against the devil cult of the Ashmadi, who we've met 2 issues ago. Now, the demon prince cult, they've planted some undead sensors, which is causing necromantic stuff to happen, which is summoning skeletons and zombies in the graveyard. And the priests of Kelemvor are there, and they're at capacity, so they're asking the adventurers to come help. And all you're going to have to do is go destroy the sensor to stop all this undead rising. This one shapes up to be quite a short and simple looking encounter in a way. It begins in Neverwinter with an orc putting up a little sign saying urgent, eventually to fight the undead at Neverdeath graveyard. When you go there, there'll be people at Neverdeath, including the Doom Guides. These Doom Guides are devoted followers of Kelemvor and could include paladins or priests or clerics, although they don't have to. Could include acolytes as well, because one of them is. When you get there, Edgar Soul Half is going to come over and just be like, oh, they've got most of the undead in south, but the mausoleum, the Von Tessa mausoleum's untouched. We'll have to see, because the note said 10 GP per skull, but he offers you 200 GP reward if you can destroy all the undead in the museum. You can enlist him to come help you as well, but he'll charge you 50 GP of your reward to do so. If you don't take him along, he'll give you the key and just send you on your way. Got a bit of notes for role-playing in that. On the way there's 3 skeletons. You either fight or do a group DC 9 dexterity check, stealth, to avoid. And then when you get here, so far the key locations just got M1's a T-junction, M2 these are all Urns and Ashes, and M3 is the original Von Tessers who founded it, and they're both buried with the diamond red in wings for 100 GP each. It hasn't mentioned any creatures yet, although the star's here, so there's the sensor we're looking for. Now the rest of the encounters here, but I found something quite strange going on. So you got this event Unholy Influence, which is basically going to be the sensor flares to life. So whenever the character's first roll initiative, it's going to activate and it's going to put some green flames at the entrance to Mausoleum to not let people in and out, unless they take 21 damage. And then every time it counts to 20, it glows in M2 so everyone can reveal it. It whispers the dead prince is nigh, and then if there's 4 or less skeletons, it will hire or rise 1d4 new skeletons. Blah blah blah, you can destroy it, it's got 1 hit point. It's protected by a Spectre, so you can't destroy it until the Spectre is destroyed. And the Spectre knows this, who's going to run and hide, although he's got a little purple line that traces him to it, so you can just use the line to try and find him. Although he's invisible, which is annoying. And all he do is do dash and disengage and use his incorporeal trait to go between M1 and M2. It's probably straight through the wall. Plus you've got your aftermath, so you'll get paid for doing it. You can probably learn that the Dread Prince is about Orcan, and then you've got a couple of stat blocks, and including this Acolyte, which is the stat block our associate will use if we hire him, and you got the format your spell listed here because it's not in the spell book. And that's all good. So let's go back to what I found this strange. I've been looking at it for ages. So for this to activate, well, when the skeletons engage the adventurers, the sensor magic activates. Fair enough. And then it flares to life when you first roll initiative within the Mausoleum. So that's pretty cool. However, the problem I'm getting is going back over the page. So to start with, you've got the introduction. You meet Edgar Soulheart and either hire him or not. Then into Mausoleum. To reach it, you've got to defeat or avoid 3 skeletons. When you get to Mausoleum though, it's an impressive structure. It's tall, 40 feet high. Grand double doors been bashed in. Natural sunlight. Several sarcophagi, which you can open with a DC 12 strength check. Then that's it. It doesn't mention there actually being any skeletons inside the Mausoleum. I'll check in case it's on the front page, but I don't think so. Apart from these 3 skeletons here, it doesn't mention there being any more skeletons anywhere. Unless as soon as you enter, the sensor should start flaring up and summoning more skeletons. Which then I guess, when the character's war, it's activated when they fight the skeletons on the way. Then when they come in, there's no initiative roll. But then as soon as initiative count 20 reaches around, it glows, it summons some skeletons. Then combat starts. Then they activate it when they roll initiative, and then it puts the fire up. That just seems a bit odd though. It seems like there should be some skeletons already in there. I don't understand why they're not there. Because I'm pretty sure you won't have any initiative count until combat starts. So either there's supposed to be some skeletons and they aren't there, or it does actually count from the 3 on the way. But then you could avoid the 3 on the way, so then you wouldn't fight them. So yeah, there's definitely some skeletons missing somewhere. But they're not on the map, they're not in the description. I just don't know where. So that's a mystery, but other than that, we'll just move on just to the back page, and here we have all the stats for the Spectre that's inside the sensor as well. It was another one creature we get to fight with the life drain action, similar to the shadows we fought before. Otherwise, apart from the missing skeletons, that's it for the adventure. Okay, so I was just finishing the video and I think I worked it out actually. So some of the bits around here might not seem right, but this bit here that says when the skeletons engage adventurers, the sensor's magic activates. Now, I'm assuming this must be referring to the skeletons on the way up, but the party can avoid them. So if you just avoid this fact, and it'll just be whenever the party encounters the skeletons, it activates, then that means you still empty an empty Mausoleum, but as soon as you do anything to the sensor, the Spectre leaves out. Obviously once the Spectre sees you roll initiative, then when you roll initiative, the sensor flares to life, and then it fills with a green flame, and every round on count 20, it starts summoning skeletons. Which that all seems to me to make sense now why. It's just annoying that it says when skeletons engage with the adventurers, the sensor's magic activates. That's the only thing that is annoying me now. Anyway, back to the magazine. So aside from trying to locate some missing skeletons, that's the it for issue 20. So it's issue 21 coming up next. And we're going to have some classics and visit the Ashmadi again, as we slowly come near to the end of Adventure 2. So thanks so much if you stuck around this far. As per normal, there'll be some links popping up, so there'll be some videos over there to follow the magazine when they're done. There'll be videos here to follow the series when it's done. Thanks for watching, hope to catch you soon.